So, welcome to the Extreme Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Scott Kress, and where we explore the topics of leadership and team performance through the lens of extreme expeditions, mountaineering expeditions, polar expeditions. Today, really excited to be talking with Daniel Mazur, one of the co-founders of Summit Climb. Dan has been leading and climbing and expeditions around the Himalayas around the world for over 30 years and is one of the most successful expedition leaders. Dan was involved in the famous rescue of Lincoln Hall from the heights of Mount Everest in 1996. Dan has also created the leader in training program for aspiring mountain guides and mountain leaders. So I'm grateful for Dan for taking some time out of his busy schedule to chat with us today. So let's get started. Welcome and thanks for being here with us today, Dan.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So before we get going talking about leadership and teams, I want people to get to know a little bit about you because you're a pretty amazing guy, pretty accomplished guy. You've done a lot of stuff, seen a lot of things. So maybe can you just start off telling us a little bit about your background, how you started in climbing?
I came from a flat place, and like a lot of people who grow up in flat areas, there's two kinds of kids in the world. There's the kids who do everything their parents say, and then the kids who do the exact opposite. So I was the one of those opposite, contrary kids.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a totally flat place, and I knew I didn't want to be there in that really flat place, where the high point there is like 15 meters above sea level or whatever.
Yeah.
So, right away, I just gravitated to go towards the mountains, and I ended up going to college in the mountains. And my first day in college, I climbed a peak right in the town. So I was just really took to it. I don't know why. I just really enjoyed being out in the mountains. Winter, summer, spring, fall. I loved all the seasons. Climbed everything around, and just working my way up, starting on small peaks. Um, little like 3,000-meter peaks, 10,000 footers, and then, started to go up to 4,000-meter peaks, 5,000-meter peaks, and, working my way up to, higher and higher mountains. Every summer we would get in the car and drive to Alaska and Canada, Yukon territories, and we would bag peaks, Denali. Drove my car up there like 5 times, with the friends. Climbed Denali 5 times. Went up to Kilauea National Park, up there, Whitehorse, climbed Mount Steele, Mount Lucania, did it by car, hiked out across the Donjek River, hitchhiked down the Alaska Highway. These were all like just fun college trips with friends. And then I started getting into bigger peaks. I decided I really like to go for higher objectives and challenges. And so, I took a student loan, hitchhiked around the world, climbed a bunch of peaks, accidentally got myself on an Everest expedition, climbed that, and made friends with mountain climbers that were doing 8,000-meter peaks. So I was lucky enough to do K2 and Lhotse, Makalu, Broad Peak, the Gasherbrooms, both sides of Everest. I did a lot of different stuff over the years, and I still love to be out there. One of my big enjoyments is bringing people into the sport. The way people brought me in, encouraged me, and taught me, and I really like encouraging others to join in. And along the way, we do a lot of leadership training and work with people and help them develop their skills and team building. Love that.
Yeah. So very similar origins to myself. I started to climb when I went to university, learning to rock climb. That's why I started out rock climbing, and then got into ice climbing and big wall climbing and aid climbing, and then started to move into mountains from there. And I met some great people who are in the sport who really kind of took me on and kind of mentored me. So I'm very similar background or very similar origins, you and I. Now I was reading through your bio, and you spent a bunch of time in Canada in your formative years. Being a Canadian myself, just curious to know what were you doing? Why were you up in Canada? What were you doing in all those years?
Well, I grew up in the middle part of the continent, and as a kid, I went to summer camp in the summers, and we'd go up north, up to the border of the U.S. and Canada, and did a lot of canoe trips up there. And then I was able to do canoe trips in Ontario, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the Northwest Territories, or whatever it's called now, and really had a great time. And when I was a kid, we only canoed. We only traveled by canoe. We didn't walk anywhere. So we just went in canoes, and we carried all our junk. And then sometimes if you couldn't canoe, you'd get to the end of the body of water and you'd have to cross a piece of land to get to the next body of water, and you have to carry all of your stuff across this piece of land to get to the next body of water. It's called a portage. So we would do the portage, and we'd carry these giant canvas packs with all our crap in there. And it was really horrible ordeal. We'd have to carry the canoes on our heads. Everything was very heavy duty for a skinny kid. And I hated it. So I remember when I saw pictures of people hiking around wearing backpacks in the mountains, we thought those people were really stupid. Like, why would you carry a backpack for fun on your back with all that weight on it when you could just canoe everywhere? So we didn't even know. I didn't even know what a mountain was
Yeah,
until I made it to college when I was 17.
yeah, yeah. I've
And that's what I did in Canada. I went there
yeah,
every summer
yeah,
for like 6 years. And if at that age, if you'd asked me what was my favorite country I wanted to be in, I would have said hands down Canada,
yeah,
because that's what I associated with a good time,
yeah,
being out in the wilderness,
yeah,
exploring amazing wild places, wild rivers, amazing terrain, um, catching beautiful fish, eating them, seeing so much cool wildlife. I saw timber wolves, I saw Arctic wolves, I saw Barron's grizzly bears. I saw caribou. I saw so much wildlife, tons of moose,
yeah,
lots of mosquitoes and
yeah,
black flies. Like, you can't believe it if you haven't been around mosquitoes and black flies. Like, if you've never had to drink your hot chocolate through a head net, I wouldn't say you've really been very far north in Canada.
yeah. I spent a lot of time in mosquito country myself. A lot of canoe trips through Canada as well. So you do a lot of speaking and raising money. One of the charities you mentioned is the Mount Everest Foundation. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, I work with this group of Sherpas, and they call themselves the Mount Everest Foundation, and they've been really lucky and very fortunate to be able to learn how to give back to their place where they live. And they specialize in environmental protection, education, healthcare, cultural preservation. They do a lot of really cool projects, building hospitals, schools in the remote villages, lots of health clinics. They've also built a bunch of monasteries and nunneries and rebuilt lots of those, doing those projects. Right now, they're working on a really interesting project. They're building a waste treatment plant for Mount Everest Base Camp, because all the human waste is carried down from Mount Everest and they just throw it in a hole over on the side of the glacier. So it's kind of really surprising that, in this day and age, here it is almost 2025, and we're still taking all the people's human waste, which is over 1,000 people, inhabit base camp, and then taking all their human waste and just throwing it in a hole, not treating it or anything's leaking into the water supply. So this group has been working on trying to process that and coming up with a cool idea that makes it into biogas, so
Yeah,
you can ferment that waste or put it in a digester, and then you can use the gas that comes out of that process and cook on it. And because there's a really big shortage of cooking fuel up there, so they can use that methane and actually cook on it. It's a technology that's been around for a really long time, and it's used all over Nepal. They call it biogas or gover gas. And so we were like, hey, why not, let's do this at Everest Base Camp.
yeah. So you're also, I'm just kind of getting to some of the key points of things that you've been involved with, and there's been a lot of them. Another one that really ties in well with what we're talking about today is the leader in training program that you put together. Maybe tell us a little bit about the origin of that, and what you look to accomplish.
Well, in the leader in training program, basically it started off because we needed leaders for the trips that I work for this company. It's called Summit Climb, and they needed leaders, and it's like, where are we going to get some leaders? And you just can't like pick up a leader off the shelf and plug them into your trip. They have to start off and learn about how you do things and the way stuff works, and the culture of the company, and it's really important. So we started off just trying to recruit leaders to go on our trips and teach them about how our trips work. And then, pretty soon we started seeing that there was a need. There's a lot of people out there who want to be leaders, But we were thinking, hey, these people, they already have an urge to be a leader. Maybe we should help them find an outlet for that urge and have a program that takes them, teaches them some of the basics of leadership, but also so important, as is you can learn a lot of stuff from books and from reading and watching YouTube videos. But until you actually do it with your hands and actually lead a trip, you don't learn nothing. You don't learn half as much. You're just learning the theories, but you have to be out there on the ground doing this stuff. So we created kind of a safe environment for those people to learn how to be a leader in real hands-on situations.
Yeah.
Also, we wanted to give recognition to those people who already were leaders, and that we wanted to say, hey, you guys, you're a leader, and you're looking to want to get on some of these big mountains that we're going to anyway. Why don't you come with us, and you can help out, and
Yeah.
kind of see how you gel into the program, and mix in with people that are already leading the trips, and you can show some of your skills, some of your knowledge and things that you know how to do, and it all becomes part of the fun. And I like that when we have a leaders in training on our trips, it creates a nice atmosphere for all the people in the group, because it makes everyone in the group realize, like, hey, there's a bunch of people here that are care about us, and we're all, there's an atmosphere of like trying to make this trip go good. And how can we make this trip go more smoothly? How can we help each other? And having the leader in training like atmosphere in the environment of the expedition, I find really brings it to a much higher level, and people get a lot more out of the trip that way.
Yeah, really focusing on building a positive team culture, getting people who already have the mindset of building a high performance team, and from a culture perspective, and there, you used the analogy earlier. I don't want to steal your analogy, but it was a great one. The pearl and oyster, right? You put a little piece of sand in there, and then it starts to create something bigger. And so by bringing leaders and training into your expeditions, you're infusing this leadership and this culture. Um,
And it
the
depends on who's in the group and who the leaders are. And I really think that, you know, for some people, they really need a lot of structure, and they want to have like a very, like almost a manual that they hold in their hand, like a handbook that says, step one, we do this, step two, we do that, step three, we do that. And that's good. And some people need that. They like that structure. It gives like a roadmap of how the expedition is going to go. I think that's great. But also, I think you need a sort of atmosphere of what is a good expedition. How does it work? How do you make the team gel? How do you build a successful team? Like, sure, you can learn this stuff. You can do it, by rote and in a really organized way, definitely. But also you need to have that sort of feeling in the team members, like, hey, this is going good. Hey, if it's not going good, I feel like, we could figure out a way to talk about this in a way that's not going to destabilize the whole thing, but it's going to make our project a success, and that we can all feel about like, hey, we're part of something bigger, and that this is like, we're giving it our best shot, and we're doing what we want to be doing here. And I find that that is like really tricky to, like, it's like tuning a radio that's, you're getting a little bit of static, and you just want to get to that right station where the music comes in really clear. And that is like a tricky art of things to build that into an expedition. And it's great having those leader in training people in as part of the mix, because that helps bring this whole thing of like, hey, we're building ourselves into a team. These are important people. We're all part of this.
and do you think that helps to create, one, either greater success, and then two, just a greater experience for people?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, for your first point, Scott, not greater success. I mean, it's always good to have more eyes on the prize, So you have more sets of eyes on stuff. There's more people paying attention. More people are watching, like, hey, how come that guy wasn't wearing his helmet? Or, hey, it looks like, clipping between anchors, there was a couple moments there where you weren't clipped in, or, so, and it's good to discuss that in non-threatening ways. So I think that's, a really important thing that, helps have more people there. But
Yeah, when you're
also, it does help because you have more people to help out to reach your goal, your final goal. It's really because this is a team sport. Okay, this isn't just like guys hiking up, to the summit with their eyes on the trail, looking down, just pounding up there as fast as they can, waving a flag, and then running down. It's a whole group of people. We're all going together. There's different people. We have a saying like when you're on a rope team, you can only climb as the slowest person on the team. So you need to analyze the situation like, okay, why are, maybe we'd like to be going faster. What can we do? Can we have a little better rope management, or, can we figure out better, timings for having our breaks and having, eating nutrition, hydration. There's all kinds of little things that make this stuff work better.
Yeah, and as you say, when you've got those leaders in training as part of the trip, just because they're in that position, they're viewing things differently. When I'm just a team member, I'm kind of waiting to be told what to do. But when I see myself as a leader, I'm looking at what needs to be done. I'm taking ownership. I'm looking for accountability. So just by giving people that title, they view things differently. And then that is going to influence the culture within the team, and that's going to influence the overall success of the expedition. So we've kind of already been getting into this, but let's get into some more of the content, specifically around leadership here. So how would you define a high performance team in an expedition environment?
Well, I always say, there's three things that we stress in our expedition. Number one, safety. Okay.
Yeah.
Everything's done in a safe manner. If people aren't feeling well, then we treat, them and help them feel better. Um, you know, People aren't doing risky stuff, although, climbing is a risky activity. So we trying to minimize or reduce the risk to the point as much as we can. So number one, safety. Number two is friendship and team building. And climbing is not a solo sport. And it's well, you can have solo climbing, but you're not on a team then, all right. But if you're in a team, if you're on an expedition, it's not a solo sport. So we, work out with each other. We help each other. We talk to each other. We communicate. We like to keep people informed. We like it when the people in the team keep the leaders informed. We want to have everybody on the same page. So we often have discussions. We talk about the plans. We ask people to vote on stuff, if there's some tricky storms coming up, or, there's the route isn't in great shape, we might discuss it. Like, hey, do you guys think we should go down and rest for a while? Do you want to hang out up here and see if things get in better shape?
Yeah.
How you guys feeling? What's your urge on this? So
Yeah.
we always say that the trip is a success when everybody comes home and they're like, hey, I liked it. There was like, okay, there was some different kinds of people there, people I never would have met in my whole life, but we were all there and we hung out and somehow we got along. We talked to each other and it was funny and I learned some new things. I heard some crazy stories and I told some myself. And, so number one, safety. Number two, friendship, teamwork. Number three, success. Okay. So success, achieving your goals. Why did you go there? Did you go there to get to the summit? Did you go there to hike to base camp? Did you go there to reach your personal high point? There's many ways to define success. I mean, for some people, success is like, hey, I hiked to the base of the mountain. I saw this giant, crazy mountain with this huge, scary glacier, and it was so intense. And that was great. That was enough for me. That's my success.
Yeah.
So, how do you define success? And so, success is why we exist as a company. It's why we run these trips. We need to be successful. but we can't have success without safety and friendship and teamwork.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
all three go hand in hand.
One of the things that I always say, within our company, when we focus on leadership development and change management, one of the things I always say is that relationship is the foundation of all high performance teams. We don't do things for each other because we have to. We do things for each other because we want to. So by building that relationship, building that foundation of friendship, it really helps people to work more effectively together to support one another. Now, you spent a lot of time on Everest, and you look at modern Everest today. It's changed a lot in the last 15, 20 years or so. You'll have what there could be 30, 40, 50 different expeditions on Everest in the spring. Some small teams, some big teams. Do you think that many of these teams or companies spend any time on team building? And what do you see as a result of that?
That's a great point. Well, I mean, you have to kind of look at why people want to climb Everest and pay to go on an Everest climb. And I think a lot of them want to have the best chance to get to the top, and they want to have it, be successful. And they not everyone, but a lot of them want to do it as cheaply as possible. So I think when you have those things going on, none of those, I mean, think about those, what I just said. It's interesting, right? They want to go to the top, have the best chance to get to the top. They want to be, have a quality experience, like they don't want to be sick,
Yeah,
and they don't want it to be too harrowing.
yeah,
They want it to
you say,
be, as easy as possible within reason, and they want it to be cheap.
yeah,
Okay, so this is not necessarily applicable to the corporate world of, Wall Street or whatever, but this is like high altitude tourism.
yeah,
So I think given those factors, I don't see team building being in that equation at all.
yeah. It's just a group of people, but they're not really a team in many
They're
cases.
customers.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the people who go in those groups, some of them would fit that customer mold, and some of them would go because they heard from their friend, or they heard from someone who went that their friend went or somebody went and it was a pretty good trip, and then they end up building their own team along the way and gelling with other people in the group, and they hang out in the dining tent and talk to each other. And um but the way those companies do things is that all the members are separate little peas, and they all are like these separate little marbles, and each member has their own separate like little Sherpa. And um at some point they all kind of separate and go their own way, and it's like one foreigner with one Sherpa, and they're doing their thing. And then so there's like no team.
yeah,
Their Sherpa's telling them what to do, and maybe there's some big boss coordinator guy who's hanging out in the base camp who's calling the shots, and you could maybe ask them a question. But you know it's this it's an interesting new kind of climbing. It's almost getting back to, just people on their own, like kind of
yeah,
pioneers with their
yeah,
own little Sherpa, sidekick. And it's
yeah.
really different. It's really
When
interesting. And
you
I'd
know
have to
when
say that's 90% of the Everest climbs now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and very different. When you go back to your origins of learning to climb, my origins of learning to climb, your canoe expeditions, my canoe expeditions, right? It was all about team. We did it as a team. We worked together. We supported each other. We trusted each other. We communicated, and that's not, what, as you say, 90% of the average expeditions are not that today.
Well,
It's a
I
changing
mean, it's
environment.
good. It's good, right? Because it's if you look at the numbers, right? The
Yeah,
odds, the safety factor, just on the pure odds, like the number of people who go, the number of deaths. I mean, it's a lot safer now, for
yeah,
sure. There you can attribute those, increases into things like electronic communications technology,
Yeah.
electronic technology developments, equipment is so much better. Um, the logistics of transport, like helicopters, way more organized yaks and porter systems. And of course, the giant game changer is the education and westernization of the Sherpas, which is giant. Like almost half the companies now are owned and run by Sherpas, maybe more, maybe more. When I started doing this, there were 200 licensed trekking operators in Nepal, and now there's more than 2,000.
Wow. Yeah. So
And we're still hanging in there. We're still doing this. We still do this. But it's like a whole new world, and we learn every day, every season, every month, every 6 years. We're learning new things and watching how this whole thing is going down and playing out. And
yeah,
it's really fascinating to be a part of it. It's exciting. You can't stand in the way of progress. I don't know who
no,
said that, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
yeah, yeah. So, keeping on the topic of Everest, but I want to go back to something a number of years ago now that very well known for, and something amazing that you did. Um, Lincoln Hall. In 1996, many of us are familiar with the story from John Krakauer's book, Into Thin Air, and you were there. And on part of that expedition, Lincoln Hall dying, and you and a few other people kind of gave up your summit push in order to save Lincoln Hall, and he would not be alive today if you didn't do that. Now, a few days prior to that, there was another man, David Sharp, in a very dire situation on the mountain, and nobody helped him out. Nobody came to his aid. So when you look at these two different situations, what do you why what's the difference there? Do you think leadership, teamwork, values? What was the difference there that one person got the aid and survived, another person did not?
Well, we stopped and helped this guy who was right below the summit, and then, he was sitting on the trail, and he was delirious, and we gave him food and water and oxygen, and revived him, and he came back to life, and we realized that he was still okay, and so we helped him go down. And like we had thought about it at the time. There were three of us, and I remember there was one of us who was like a guy who was like a school teacher, and he had really worked hard to get his time off of work. And I remember we talked about it as a team, like, hey, this guy looks like he's maybe rescuable, and we should maybe help him out. It was early in the morning, and we were right looking up at the summit. We are just on our way up there, and it was right above us, just a few hundred meters. And I remember the school teacher guy was like, "Yeah, I want to go up. I want to summit this." And then there was another guy who was like a student, and he was finishing up his grad school or whatever, and I was like, "Well, what do you think?" And the other guy was like, "Well, I can't leave this guy. I want to help him. And then there was another guy on our team, one of the Sherpas, and he was like, let's go up there. We're right there, man. Maybe on the way down or something, we can help him." So I think that's kind of a really interesting, example of people's different motivations. And for myself, I had felt inside myself like, oh my God, like this guy's really barely alive, and he could die at any second, not just from like exposure, hypothermia, or altitude sickness, but he could just fall off the cliff and just die right there. He wasn't clipped any ropes, and we're on a knife edge ridge. And so I think that was, the that represents some of the different viewpoints and perspectives. While we were standing there helping the guy, and strapping on his oxygen and getting him clipped to the ropes and moving him to a safer place and giving him water and food, a couple of climbers came past us, and we're like, "Hi, we found this guy up here." And they were like, "Oh, no, 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 speak English." I was like, "Okay, have a nice day." And then they kept going up. And then so weeks later we were back in base camp, and we went to visit the guy, Lincoln Hall, that he lived, and he's fingers were all like bad. He had like serious frostbite out there all night. He had like his jacket open. You could see his bare chest. He's going through hypothermic delirium. So he was in, orbit and thought he was on a boat or something. He was totally out of it. So we went to visit him a little later in base camp and talked to him, and he could talk and he was okay. And then I was like, hey, how about those two guys that walked past us and they couldn't speak the English? So I was like, oh, I think I know who those guys were. And I asked around and they're like, oh yeah, there's a couple of guys over there and they summited the same day as you. And as you were up there helping out that Lincoln guy. So I went over there and I was like, okay, I'm in their camp. And I could see them. One guy's like messing around with some wires and solar panels, and another guy was like drinking coffee in the tent. And so I was like, how can I talk to these guys? What should I say? So I went over to him and I was like, well, so hey, remember me? Like I was up there that day and there was a guy who needed help and we saw you guys. And they're like, no, it wasn't us. And they're speaking English. And I was like, oh yeah, it was, because I saw you were wearing that green jacket, and he was like drying his down suit. I was like, and I saw there's your down suit. Those are your boots right there. It was you. And they were like, oh yeah, maybe it was. Yeah, maybe. And then so I was like, so I mean, I wasn't there to like get in a fight or anything. I was just like, well, what do you guys think about? I was like, how can I dig some more, I'm always a guy who's like digging and
Yeah.
digging in, and I was like, how can I dig some more out of this, and so I was like, oh, what do you guys think about someone who goes up to Everest, gets way up high and then can't get back down? And the guy's like, well, to climb Everest, you have to be really strong and you have to have all your stuff that you need with you and all your oxygen, food, and water and stuff. And you have to be strong enough with all your supplies to get up there. And then you have to be able to get back down. And
Yeah.
then I was thinking to myself, and Scott, what do you think he was saying that he felt should have happened to Lincoln Hall?
I don't know. Did maybe they're
What do
thinking
you
that
think he
Lincoln?
meant by that? Like you have
Yeah.
to be able to get yourself up there and get back down. And
Yeah.
if you can't,
Then you're out of luck.
you die.
Yeah.
And that's what he was saying, a very fatalistic
Yeah.
approach to life, right? Like
Yes.
if you can't do it,
Every person for themselves, eh?
you die.
Yeah. And I think, often we see that a lot on Everest, because there is no connection between people. There is no relationship. You're walking by somebody who you don't know, you don't have any connection to them. They've got goggles on, a face mask. It's really easy that they're unknown to you. It's they're anonymous, and it's easy to walk by and not take responsibility. And um, when you have a unified team, you and your climbing buddies, you're not going to leave them behind because you've got a different relationship with those folks. I think that's, a lot of the challenges today is that because you have so many individuals on Mount Everest that they don't know each other, they don't care about each other, and they're not willing to give up their opportunity for success to help somebody else because they don't know them. But
Scott,
yeah,
that is a great example of what you just illustrated about the benefits of team building.
exactly.
Is that
Yeah.
if you make yourself into a team and you teach that to others, it has like spillover effects into other areas that are great.
Yeah.
And people care about each other and
Yeah.
people will go the extra mile,
Yeah.
and do things. And if you don't have that, it becomes what you just said, every person for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah. The team environment just creates such a safer environment, a more efficient environment, and a greater overall experience for everybody involved. To kind of change topics a little bit here, but still within the area of leadership, is if we're looking at change, right? Change on these expeditions. Like, have you ever had an expedition go exactly as planned? No,
Oh
right?
man.
Never happens,
I
right?
mean, it's a
Changes always
living
happen.
thing, right? It's
Yeah.
you never
So
know. And there's so many factors, the people's health in the team, their emotions, what's going on for them at home. And then there's all kinds of things that play into it, like the weather, the environment. Like
Yeah.
so many years on Everest, we had like earthquakes. One year we had a horrible labor strike.
Which is,
Other things was, our permits came in weeks
yeah,
late. Oh,
yeah,
no, this is a mount. We always say, hey, it's the mountains.
yeah.
You know, it's
So
like
as
if
a
we wanted to
leader,
have an easy, predictable sport, we would do golf.
yeah.
We'd be in
When,
Switzerland, hanging out on some beautiful golf course,
yeah,
sipping on martinis or whatever
yeah,
they do,
yeah,
on their riding around on their cart.
yeah.
Everybody
So,
wants what they want.
so as a leader, you have to deal with change all the time. So what is it that a leader needs to have that allows them to deal effectively with change and then to help guide their team through that change?
Ooh, that's really good, Scott. Well, I think communication is such a key factor because change or, you know, uh, unexpected things that come up is like really subjective.
Mhm.
So you need to be with the group, and also you need to figure out where that change is coming from, that impact, what's driving it, are other people perceiving it the same as you? Because we're all individuals, so something that's a big issue or for you or something might be different for others, and they might not see it the same as you. So communication is really big. One thing I think is that, I mean, for someone, if you're really a leader and you've done a lot of this and you've been in these situations before, then you may have some experience to draw on that what happened last time. Or, I mean, it's great. We were talking about some of the developments and changes in climbing, and one of the big changes is through, all the new communications, electronic media and stuff. Is It's great to be able to look up stuff. Like you could, like somebody was asking me the other day, like, hey man, I have type 1 diabetes, and I have to inject myself like every day or two, and I have to monitor my blood sugar, and like, what should I do? How am I going to manage this, while I'm climbing this huge mountain? And so I used to go and call my doctor friends and ask them what I should do, and they'd be like really conservative and be like, "Well, they should have a treatment plan, and they should have, these, measurements at certain intervals." And but now I can look it up on Google, and other people can write in what they did. Now, okay, I'm not saying that maybe what they wrote is their own subjective experience, but
Yeah,
it's really helpful to be able to
yeah,
research this stuff. And so if you're like a new leader or you haven't been in the experience before and you haven't seen this, it's great if you have access to study what other people have done. And that would really help also when you're working with the team, especially if you're a new leader. Like as a more experienced leader, you can be like, well, this is what we're gonna do. And or you could try to say it more diplomatically. Don't be like, this is what we're gonna do. You could say like, I've been in this situation before. Here's what we did in other times, and this seemed to work. And I'm thinking that this might be the way forward for our group. What do you guys think? But if you're like, haven't done this before, you're like a new leader, you can be like, well, I studied these other situations that these other teams encountered, and these are the things that they did. And maybe this is how it applies to our group. That is such a huge resource as a backup.
yeah.
Now, what else did you mean by change so that I don't get off the
Yeah, no,
topic?
no, I know exactly. It's about when change occurs, how do you as a leader process it? And then how do you then help your team move through it? So maybe what we could do is, can you think of a significant change on an expedition that you've been part of, and how did you or the leader respond to it? How did the team respond to it? So as you say, maybe it's um, when I went to climb Everest first time, we were supposed to climb Everest from the Tibetan side, and at the last minute, our permits got canceled and we had to switch to Nepal. Massive change. We've been planning for a year and a half to go to Tibet and had everything designed for Tibet, and now we're in Nepal. And different people on the team responded to it differently. So, do you have an example of a significant change on an expedition you've been on, and how it impacted the team?
Well, one thing is that when I'm leading the group, I always keep things on I try to keep things on little more tentative basis. And I always like reinforce from the beginning, like, hey, like if we're in Nepal, I always say TIN. This is Nepal. And all the team starts to say that too. It's like, I'm like, hey, the bus is supposed to come tomorrow at 2 to pick us up at the hotel and take us to the airport. And then I'll say TIN. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, this is Nepal. Like they said 2, but it might not come till 5, And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, really. And I'll always reinforce that. I'll be like, hey, this is where we are. The whole thing is that if you're patient and you have things to do to keep you from going crazy, then you'll be okay and you'll have to wait it out and weird things will happen and it'll look really scrambled, like nothing's going to work out. And then things always fall together at the last minute and somehow it all works out. And then you end up getting there and you're okay. But I can think of some examples of really big changes that happened, last summer in August. I was leading a group to go up to Everest, and then up to the base camp, and then we couldn't fly into Lukla because of bad weather. So we went to the airport a couple times, but the weather was so bad. So that same afternoon on the second day, I had already called ahead and I informed the group. I was like, hey, if we're gonna get up there, we're gonna have to walk. And they were like, no way. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, we're going to take this bus and then we're going to stay in a little hotel up in the countryside and then we're going to take this Jeep and then we're just going to walk up there. And it's a few extra days, but we'll get there. And they were like, no. I was like, yeah. I mean, and it'll be beautiful. It's amazing. And you'll see so much more incredible stuff. And the drivers are really professional and you'll get to see like how they build roads in Nepal or how they don't build them. And it'll be amazing, and it's going to be a whole different trip. And so we went and it ended up to be amazing. We were staying in these little towns and it was a totally different plan and it didn't work out in the same way, but we ended up getting to our goal anyway. It was hard, but somehow that we were able to get past that and go up there anyway. It sort of like felt like a really big hurdle was we succeeded to get over it. And so everyone had this more sense of like reward, like
Yeah,
wow. And it was some really type 2 fun, like at the time it's like ooh and hard and difficult, but at the end it's like you talk about it like, man, we did that. It was like, I mean, how many people do that? How many people walk up there? We
very
did
few,
it. It was
very
like,
few.
okay.
Yeah. So you're setting the expectations early by, TIN. This is Nepal, right? So things are not always going to go as planned. We need to be patient. We need to relax. You're modeling the behavior when it happens. You are staying positive and looking at the upside of it, and then reflecting back upon it. What you've accomplished is more than what many people get the experience to do or get the opportunity to do. So it's you have to be very resilient on these expeditions to bounce back from tough times. Um, so what can cause somebody to lose positivity, do you think, or lose energy or drive or desire on an expedition?
Ooh, that's a great question. Um,
And there could be a lot of different factors, I think.
I think that a lot of it really depends on how you feel physically. Like if you feel good physically, like if you have pain or you're um like every time you eat, your stomach feels weird, or you can't stop coughing. So I have some friends who are professional doctors and work in the medical field, and they said a huge thing in medicine now is pain management, and that they've learned to be like, they ask people like maybe you've been in the hospital or someone who has, and they'll be like, "What's your pain level on 1 to 10?" And you're like, "Well, it's kind of a 5," and they're like, "Wow, that's pretty far up there," or you're like, "Oh, it's only a 2. It's way down there." And so that kind of gives them a clue, like, you know, how is this person taking it on? Are they feeling the effects? Are they physically? Okay, so that's number one. I see that a lot. People that don't feel good. And it's a communication thing in so many ways. We always tell people, like, you're in a group, you need to tell people when you're feeling things. If you're
Yeah.
sick, you can just quietly tell the leader. It's safe, you're not going to be judged, but we want to know. It's really important because people will hide stuff, and maybe they're not able to eat right, or maybe they can't sleep, or and all these things have a way of like chipping away at your psyche. So it's kind of this mental game. And that gets us into the mental and emotional part. And the mental part, it's hard to break that up, but some people just feel like, I can do this. I can do this. I can rise to this challenge. I can succeed. This looks tough. This is different than anything I've ever done, but I've been able to succeed at other tough things in my life. I know that if I just bite my lip and just you know, focus and try. I can do this. And I see that a lot of people are good at that. They're really good at that. They're like, I can just pull through this.
Yeah.
And other people are like, I don't know if I could do this. They're like, I don't know. And there's a lot of people who I are near and dear to me and my family and my loved ones and a lot of my friends. And oh, let me turn that on. Sorry. There's a lot of people are near and dear to me and my friends and family and in my circle, very close to me. And they are trying to manage their own feelings of, can I do this in life? Like, can I make this happen? I'm worrying. I'm worrying a lot. I'm worrying too much. I'm anxious. Um, I can't sleep at night. I can't focus on my job. I get these constant feelings of like, I'm no good, I can't do that. And when I was young, I came from the generation where you should just tough through anything and you should just not complain. You should just put your head down and you should just keep going. But, you know, I'm experiencing a lot of people in the world now that there's other options than just keeping your head down and keeping going like a snowplow through a snowbank. It's like you may be able to have some strategies of things that help you, like yoga, meditation, stretching exercises, maybe reading the Bible, maybe taking certain anti-anxiety medications or things like that. And so uh we're starting to see, well, we did start seeing people like that on our trips about 20 years ago, and we're starting to see more and more people like that who are coming on our trips. Now, I can't tell you what that's about. We have a form they have to fill out where they say what medications they're taking or what things that they have going on in their life. And we ask them in the
Yeah.
form, like, what things might you encounter that we should know about, and there's it's not a huge amount of these people, but they're there. And then it's interesting when they get once they Scott, once they get on the trip. And so they're on the trip, right? And then one thing I notice is if they have a medication, we have to be really careful that it doesn't get separated from them. It doesn't go in their duffel bag. It's in their pocket with them at all times. Because sometimes your luggage gets separates from you. The yaks go on a second day or something like that. There's a lot of cargo logistics. Um, Another thing is that they have like we learn what is their coping strategy, or we try to find out about that, like
Yeah.
from them or their doctor, like is it deep breathing, or is it what helps you get past these moments where you're like, I don't think I can do this. This is over my head. Um, you know, every year, Scott, we have people who go to the base of Everest every year and they see the ice fall, the Kumbo ice fall right above base camp, and they're like,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's enough for me. I'm leaving. And then we have other people who maybe hike above the Kumbo ice fall, go higher than that, and they're like, I made it. I made it up higher. I went to Camp One. This is great. It's a total success. That's good enough for me. And so we were always like thinking about help these people? How can we help them do better? How can we help them get
Absolutely.
past that? Because that's one of our goals, is to get everybody up to the top and to help people live up to their potential, and to find out what is your potential. you know, you, Susie, you're on this trip, you wanted to climb Everest. Now you're up here in base camp. You're like, not sure you want to go through the ice fall. Now, how can we do that? Is that set in stone? You're not going through the ice fall no matter what? Or is there something that we could do to help you get
Sure.
focused on that? Maybe we can hike some higher peaks in the area, go partway through the ice fall. Like, how can we work on this and massage you into that framework? Because looking at you, Susie, you look like you could do this. You seem like you're fit. You got the gear. You look like you feel okay. It's just your head isn't there. How can we? And that's one of the biggest challenges to any expedition leaders and in team building is how to get people to maximize their potential. How to even find out what is their potential.
Yeah. Yeah. I often say that you climbing Everest, right? You have to be physically fit. But I always say that is just your entry ticket to the door. Once you get there, the difference between success and failure is up here, it's here, right? It's in your head, it's in your heart. It's about how you push through the challenges, how you bounce back from the tough times. So, what's next for you? You're home for a little bit right now. What's
Next
next on
week,
the
I'm
expedition?
going to Nepal next week,
Nice.
and I'm climbing a 20,000 footer, a couple of them in the area of called Manang, which is in Nepal. It's in the rain shadow of the Annapurnas. So supposedly they get less rainfall because they've had a huge monsoon with a lot of flooding. It's the rainy season over there. So I'm super excited for that because I love to climb. I love to get out in those peaks.
Yeah.
And I've been up in that area a little bit and I'm getting more in depth into there. I've been looking for more opportunities for people who get time off in the summer. These people might work in education and they have like July and August off. Like some countries in the world, like France, like the whole country gets August off. Switzerland, a lot of countries like Germany, a lot of them have that. They get all England, a lot of them have like the whole month of August is free, no school, nothing. They barely work, they don't do anything. They call it the silly season, So I've been looking at more opportunities for what you can do out there that's, right in the middle of summer. And
Yeah.
so I'm excited. I'm so excited,
Cool.
going to climb some 20,000-foot peaks. It's a blast. Then
Yeah.
in the fall, we're doing Ama de Blanc, a really sweet peak. It's called the Matterhorn of Asia. It's almost 7,000 meters high, and it's only a 4.5 day trek from Lukla. It's really easy. It's technical climbing. It's mixed snow, ice, rock. It's moderate, so it's really quite doable, and the ropes are really nicely fixed. Also, we're doing Barunse, which is an amazing 7,000-meter peak, which is in a remote area, but really near Everest. It's incredible snow ridge climbing. We warm up on a trekking peak called Mara Peak, which has incredible views of the whole Himalayan massif of Everest. It's set back from the range, so it's like stunning. And so you climb Mara, then you go in this really remote valley, climb Barunse, then you cross this ridge, you drop down into the Khumbu Valley, and you can go have a cappuccino and chocolate cake and hang out in this like Sherpa paradise. It's so fun. Oh my God, I love it over there.
Sounds
That's
like
where
a
my
great
heart is.
Sounds like a great few months. One thing that I love about Almond Blum, I think Almond Blum's got one of the nicest base camps ever. Right, it's just
On
such a
grass.
yeah, it's just such a nice place to spend a bit of time. Beautiful location.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I love those
So
mountains. And the October season, the post monsoon season is so great because everything's green. There's lots of wildlife. All the people, their harvests are in. They have a lot of food. Everybody's happy. The air's really clean because the rains cleared it all up. It's such a great time to be there.
yeah, cool. So I'm going to wrap this up there, Dan. I think you've got lots of stuff to do to get on, and I'm going to
Sorry I talk so much, Scott.
yeah, no, no. Well,
I
that's
apologize for that.
exactly what we want to do. I want to hear from you. People are not here to hear from me. People are here to hear from you and hear
I love what you're
stories
doing,
from you.
and I love I've been checking out your website. It's really cool. Um, maybe I can get a link to you on here.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So we can. I'll post this up for all of people to see, and we can connect together. So let's just chat a little bit about that offline. I'll just wrap us up here. So just I want to say thanks again, Dan, for taking a little bit of time to
Thank you,
spend with us
Scott.
today. Share
I
your
really enjoyed.
ideas, your insights, your experiences. I hope the people who get to see this, really enjoy this, and it inspires you, the viewer, to reach new heights in what you do, to be great leaders, to build high performance teams. So until next time, we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Scott.